Welcome to this web seminar. This time we're going to talk about the value chain of Porter. My name is Pepijn Schoenmaker. In his book, Competitive Advantage of 1990, Michael Porter speaks about and explains the value chain which actually every business has. Every business has its own value chain. The value chain explains how functional your organization is, how the organization manages all the different kind of departments or business units, how they manage each other, how they communicate with each other, and how fluent all the different lines are between the business units. This is the value chain. It looks like this. The value chain, first of all, determines two different sides: the supporting activities and the primary activities. The primary activities are more the operational kind of activities, whilst the supporting activities are the managing activities. The basic idea of this model is that you determine the internal linkages of the value chain. An internal linkage exists when a certain activity communicates well with another activity. This can be between supporting activities or between primary activities. Please bear in mind that every business has a supply chain. So we also determine external linkages. Let me try to explain with an example. For instance, if you are producing mobile phones or smartphones, you can imagine that there are really clear primary activities. You have the inbound activities. All the rough materials come into this internal or inbound logistics. This is your first linkage, which is external, because somebody, for instance, our Dutch firm DSM, supplies you rough materials which help you produce the first forms of a mobile phone, for instance. So if this linkage is really short, really clear, really helping you, then that's an efficient link, an external link. So you produce the phones, which you receive the products in your inbound logistics, and you go to the next one, which is operations. You start manufacturing your phone. Maybe you make the cases, you make the internal technology, etc., etc., and then you have a certain product. Then it will go to the outbound logistics. See it as a plant with all these workers working on their product and constantly give them to the next department. Marketing and sales obviously has to do some marketing and have to sell the products that you have produced. And if that goes efficient, then your product will be at your retailers or your shops. If they are being sold there, and afterwards, obviously, you have the service, for instance, your call centers and your warranties, etc., which contain your services. If these linkages are really fluent and really efficient, for instance, as Paul Porter also mentions, you have an operational excellent company, then these linkages will be really fast and really clean and with no hassle, and you don't lose any margins, for instance, over there. Now, these are not the only internal linkages. Let's have a look at the supporting activities. Let's start with the firm infrastructure. How is the firm structured? What kind of strategies do you have? What kind of mission do you have? What kind of vision do you have? What kind of goals do you have? What kind of management do you have? Everything has been made up with it at the top of the firm, and there are probably clear goals and a clear strategy. But how clear are these goals and strategies with the other activities that you have? For instance, the human resource management. Human resource management makes sure that we have the right people at the right spot with the right skills. so the right staff in your firm. Then we have the technology department. I always like to call this the R&D, the research and development department. This is where these mobile phones are being invented. These are where the sketches are. This is where new products are being developed, and because of the ideas that the firm has. And last one is procurement. Procurement is often a very complicated name. Don't make it more complicated than it is. It's just everything that is being bought for the firm. That can be the rough materials that you need, but it could also be inventory or the building that you are in. Everything that's being bought for the firm to produce whatever you make or whatever you sell or whatever you invent is being hosted by procurement. Let's have an example. Our example for the mobile phone firm. If the firm thinks that we have to have a higher target, so for instance, let's go not from 10,000 units, but to 20,000 units, let's double our sales, then the firm can think of this as a target or as a goal, but the rest of the firm really needs to act like that. So marketing and sales, so this is your first internal linkage, has to know about these goals, because they, for instance, the sales team has to run harder, has to sell more stuff, has to perhaps maybe find different buyers for your product. But you can also imagine that your logistics, your inbound logistics needs to know this. That's your second internal linkage, because they have to buy new products. I just mentioned procurement. So procurement has to know that higher volumes will enter your business. That's another internal linkage. And human resource management perhaps needs to hire more staff to produce all these extra mobile phones that you want to sell. So everywhere there's an internal linkage. Everyone has to know from each other what needs to be done, what the goals are, how fast they have to manage certain things, or how fast they have to produce certain products. Now, if all these linkages are really smooth, really clear, and everybody knows from each other what needs to be done, then on the end of the line, your margin will be higher. If you have weak internal linkages, your margin will be lower, because you have a lot of loss in your company because people don't communicate with each other, don't know each other's goals, and don't know what they're doing. Now, as a reminder, every business has a value chain. It doesn't matter in what kind of business you are. It could also be services. Only the names of all the primary and secondary activities will be the same, but they will have a different content. So we determine internal linkages and external linkages. It's a really valuable model. The model can be used in internal analysis, but you could also try to determine how these value chains of your competitors are being regulated or being implemented. Thank you. This was the end of this web seminar.